Welcome, everyone, to QIMA Supply Chain Soundbites. Today, we're unpacking the very latest QIMA Quarterly Barometer report. Now, this isn't just some random survey. It's built on real data analysis from tens of thousands of QIMA inspections and audits worldwide. It really gives you a snapshot of the latest global quality, compliance, and crucially, trade trends, a shortcut to understanding what's happening right now.
And it really couldn't be more timely, could it? I mean, the whole global trade landscape feels incredibly, volatile, uncertain, especially, with peak season just around the corner and the ongoing impact of tariffs still playing out. So hopefully this barometer offers some crucial insights for you if you're a business, a retailer, manufacturer trying to navigate all this complexity.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's dive straight in. The report, it kicks off looking at U.S. supply chains. And, you might expect huge, sudden shifts given all the talk about trade policy and the changes in Q2 2025. But what's really quite fascinating is that for U.S. brands and retailers, some long-standing procurement patterns have surprisingly held pretty steady. What's the data actually telling us there?
Yeah, it's a story of evolution, maybe, rather than revolution. QIMA's findings show that in Q2 2025, demand from U.S. buyers for inspections and audits back in China, it dropped by about 24% compared to last year.
Okay, 24%, that's significant.
It is, but look at the contrast. During that exact same period, demand for inspections in Southeast Asia's key supplier markets, it jumped up by 29%.
Wow. Okay, so a definite swing there.
A very clear swing.
And this isn't just a knee-jerk reaction to something that happened last month, is it? You mentioned evolution. This sounds like part of a bigger multi-year realignment.
Exactly right. This is definitely not a sudden jolt. This gradual multi-year shift of U.S. supply chains away from China, it's a trend we've actually been seeing pretty consistently since around mid-2023. Southeast Asia's slice of the pie for U.S. sourcing, it's just been steadily growing, while China has, incrementally seen its share decrease.
And are there specific countries really benefiting?
Yeah, we're seeing places like Vietnam, Indonesia, and the Philippines really emerge as key beneficiaries here. They're attracting a noticeable uptick in new business. It really points to, I think, a deliberate, sustained effort by U.S. companies to, diversify where they're sourcing from.
Okay, so that's the trend. But what does this mean right now, practically speaking, especially with peak season almost upon us?
Well, that brings us to a pretty significant challenge on the horizon. You've got this temporary pause on tariffs for most non-China countries, right? That's set to expire in July.
Oh, right. Bad timing.
Exactly. The timing is critical because it lined up almost perfectly with the start of holiday season procurement. So it means U.S. supply chains are going to be under renewed pressure just as peak season really gets going. It could definitely impact costs, lead times, the usual pressures, but maybe amplified.
Okay, so a potential squeeze coming for U.S. importers. Now, while the U.S. is dealing with that, QIMA's data also picked up something else fascinating. China seems to be strategically reinforcing its economic ties elsewhere, specifically with the European Union.
It certainly looks that way. Despite all the noise around U.S.-China trade tensions, the data suggests China might be playing a longer game.
What's the evidence there?
Well, look at this. In Q2 2025, demand for product inspections in China, but from European brands and retailers, it actually grew by 5% compared to the year before. And maybe more telling, China's share in their overall sourcing portfolio also ticked up slightly in that period.
So not pulling back, maybe even leaning in a little.
It suggests a certain level of, continued reliance, perhaps even a deepening one in some areas.
And that 5% isn't just a flat number across the board, is it? I remember seeing some specific country surges.
No, you're right. It's quite varied. Demand absolutely surged in the Netherlands, up a huge 27% year over year. Austria was up 21%. Then you had more moderate, but still solid growth in Spain. That was up 6%, Poland 5%, and even Germany up 4%.
So it's pretty widespread across Europe, this continued engagement.
It seems so. And if you drill down into specific sectors, one really stands out. Toys and recreational products. Demand there from European buyers for inspections in China jumped 24% year over year.
24% just for toys. Wow.
Yeah. And that raises a really interesting question, doesn't it? What does that tell us about Europe's, let's say, ongoing reliance on China for certain key consumer goods, even while they talk about diversification?
Is it just too hard to shift some things? Like, what are the practical realities keeping them tied to China for categories like toys, even if strategically they might want to move?
I think that's a big part of it. You're talking about highly specialized infrastructure, right? Deeply integrated supplier networks that have been built up over decades. And frankly, economies of scale that are just, unparalleled in many cases. For complex products, like many toys with specific molds, electronic components, safety testing requirements, the ecosystem in China is just incredibly efficient.
The tooling, the component availability.
Exactly. Reshoring that or even diversifying it significantly, it's a massive, long-term undertaking. The cost efficiencies are incredibly difficult to replicate quickly elsewhere.
Okay, that makes sense. So Europe's maintaining those key China links, especially for complex goods. But at the same time, they are looking elsewhere too, right? Expanding sourcing more broadly.
Oh, absolutely. It's not an either situation. They definitely have a broader strategy, expanding efforts both closer to home within the region and further overseas. And this seems to be encouraged, maybe, by consumer sentiment stabilizing a bit across Europe, gives businesses a bit more confidence to invest in those new sourcing relationships.
So where are they looking beyond China?
Well, Southeast Asia is definitely on their map, too.
Yeah.
QIMA data shows EU demand for inspections and audits there rose a solid 13% year over year in Q2.
13%. And any particular hotspots?
Yeah, definitely seeing some countries capture significant new business from European buyers. Cambodia was up 9% year over year, Vietnam saw a 16% increase, and Thailand had a really impressive 29% jump.
Thailand, interesting. Almost matching the U.S. growth there.
It is. These regions are clearly becoming important diversification targets for Europe as well.
And you mentioned sectors earlier. Within that Southeast Asia growth for the EU, was there a standout?
There was the textile and apparel sector. Demand there climbed 21% compared to the prior year, which actually outpaced the region's overall average growth for EU buyers.
Textiles and apparel. Why the particular focus there?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. European brands, especially in fashion, are always looking for that mix of capability, cost, and increasingly speed and resilience in their supply chains. But beyond Asia, let's not forget nearshoring. That remains absolutely central for European procurement.
Right, bringing production closer to home.
Exactly, and the demand reflects that. Inspection demand across the EU's nearshoring and reshoring markets, think Eastern Europe, North Africa, that grew by a pretty substantial 18% year over year in Q2. And what's really fascinating here is the dynamism down in the Mediterranean sourcing hubs.
Like where?
Morocco, for instance, saw a huge 53% jump in inspection demand from EU buyers compared to last year. Egypt was up a massive 73%, and Tunisia climbed 35%.
Wow, those are big numbers.
They really are. These countries are really emerging as top destinations as brands look to diversify their supplier base, and they seem to be successfully competing with, say, Turkey. Turkey's powerhouse textile industry has faced a few headwinds this year, rising costs, some trade relationship shifts, making these Mediterranean alternatives look increasingly attractive.
Okay, so a really dynamic picture in Europe, maintaining China links, pushing into SE Asia, and boosting nearshoring in places like North Africa. Very complex. Let's shift gears now, maybe turn our attention to Latin and South America. That region had a strong start to the year, and the trends seem to show promise that goes beyond just, the usual U.S. nearshoring story. What's the QIMA data revealing there?
Yeah, that's a really key distinction to make, because there's an interesting contrast in the Q2 data. On one hand, U.S. demand for inspections and audits down in Latin and South America actually fell by 9% year over year.
Oh, okay, so U.S. demand cooled off a bit.
It did in Q2, but here's the twist. Global demand for the region's sourcing, so from all buyers, not just the U.S., it actually rose by 8% year over year during that same period.
Huh. So if U.S. demand is down, but overall demand is up, what's driving that growth? It's not just the U.S. nearshoring focus then.
Exactly. Something else is definitely at play. And it seems to be largely driven by intra-regional trade.
Trade within the region itself.
Precisely. We're seeing really robust business from local buyers, companies within Latin America, sourcing from suppliers in neighboring countries. We're seeing this in places like Mexico, Colombia, Peru, Chile, El Salvador, the Dominican Republic. Suppliers there are getting strong business from local and regional clients.
That's fascinating. It suggests strengthening internal economic activity, right? Building supply chains within the region, not just serving external markets like the U.S.
It's a strong sign of that, yes. A growing self-reliance, perhaps.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, this rise of intra-regional trade, sometimes called South-South trade, what does that really signal for global trade flows moving forward? How should businesses maybe adapt their thinking?
Well, I think it underscores that future global trade flows are likely becoming more multipolar, less strictly reliant on those traditional east-west, north-south axes we've been used to for decades. For businesses, I mean, this potentially opens up whole new markets,
Yeah.
not just for sourcing inputs, but potentially for selling finished goods within these growing regional blocks.
New opportunities, but maybe new challenges too.
Absolutely. It definitely presents unique challenges. You've got to navigate different regulatory environments across countries, sometimes even within the same region.
Right.
You need to establish new logistics chains, understand very diverse local consumer preferences. It really highlights the growing importance of, let's say, localized strategies, even for global companies, particularly in an economy that still feels pretty uncertain overall.
What a tour through the latest QIMA barometer. It really does lay bare just how dynamic and, frankly, complex global supply chains are right now. As we've heard, it's clearly not just about tariffs anymore. It's about these deep, ongoing realignments, sometimes surprising resilience in old trade ties, but also the clear emergence of new regional strengths. It's really reshaping where and how things get made and moved.
It absolutely is. And, given all these evolving trade relationships we've talked about, plus those looming peak season pressures, it really leads us to a final, maybe provocative thought for everyone listening. How might businesses, how might you proactively rethink your supply chain resilience? Not just tweaking things for the immediate challenges, but really thinking the long-term strategic advantage in this new, more multipolar trade world. And maybe what unforeseen opportunities might actually arise from truly embracing diversification across multiple regions, rather than just focusing on shifting from one single country to another.